Hi, and welcome to the CAFMA Connect. I'm your host, Fire Chief Scott Freitag, and with me today is my good friend, Captain Ben Roche, President of Local 3066.
Good afternoon, Chief. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Ben. Thank you. And John Fedema sends his appreciation for you coming in so he didn't have to do this. He was nervous.
I know how much he's disappointed not to be here.
Yeah, not so much. He was in his office with the door closed when I left with the little sign that said, Chief Freitag not allowed.
It's funny how when filming day comes, people scatter from you.
It happens. Well, not just filming day, but for example, I have some ideas today on some things for Chief Rose and his division. Not tech services this time, but since the U Pickett fire, we had some challenges at that fire, and that's great. And people say, okay, well now we know how to work through it. Well, why are we working through it? Why don't we figure out exactly what those challenges were and say we're working to address them? One of those things, Chief Rose, would be a trailer with a 100-gallon diesel tank on it, as well as a place to mount a barrel of DEF fluid for diesels, and a way to fill them using that trailer. I think that's a good idea. It's an inexpensive idea, and it addresses some of the challenges we faced.
Yeah. Doing away with some relying on other agencies for providing those things would be very resourceful for CAFMA.
Well, and the other thing is they did pick up the fuel truck from Fleet, but calling that thing a fuel truck is a stretch. There's 25 gallons of gasoline on one side, 25 gallons of diesel on the other. You filled up an engine.
It takes up a couple gallons.
Yes.
And that we were just talking about that yesterday. What is that called? Is it fuel truck 1, fuel truck 3?
I think you can call it whatever you want.
Just fuel truck.
Yeah. Please come help. We're running out of fuel. With the fuel lights on, it's the fuel light truck. That's what we can call it. So, Ben, before we get into what we're going to talk about today, I wanted to mention that last week, we believe it's the first time and it's ever been done. But as one of the executive board members for the Arizona Fire Chiefs Association, we crashed your conference, which is the state union, PFFA conference, Professional Firefighters of Arizona.
Yeah, it's interesting times. We've really never had attendance by chiefs down there during the conference itself. We've honored some at the awards banquets, but it's just a testament to the relationships that we've developed throughout the state and the collaboration that we're doing at the state level to make this fire service better.
Right. And, the state president, Brian Jeffries, he was gracious enough to invite us to the opening ceremonies the next day. And he talked a lot about partnerships and what we've been able to accomplish over the last 5 or 6 years by working collaboratively between the professional firefighters, the Arizona Fire Chiefs, Arizona Fire Districts. Truly, we are stronger as one than we are as the individual pieces.
Oh, it makes so much sense. I know our elected, it's easier on them when we're all aligned going after the same issues instead of them having to be confused with what the firefighters want, what the fire chiefs want, and the fire districts want.
Right.
If we're all pointed in the same direction, speaking the same language, it makes an easier decision for them to know it's good for all.
Well, and we greatly appreciated the hospitality and being welcomed with open arms. Our intent was, hey, we're going to go down. We'll be out at the resort, and hopefully people will interact with us, but we didn't want to just interject ourselves. And we were there for about an hour, and pretty soon we had a lot of different folks from the union over just chatting with us, having conversations, whether it was about actual fire service related stuff or just in general families. It was a fantastic opportunity to interact. And I really appreciate the folks with Local 3066, of which you are the president, because I had some fantastic conversations with them that night.
Yes, and that's a big part of the conference that we have is harvesting relationships and making sure they continue to thrive, providing new ideas and resources that we can bring back home after we're there. And
this really leads us into what we're going to talk about today, which is the legislative issues that we've been working on throughout this session. But I want to touch on one thing real quick. I know, shocking, but I want to bring up AMR because I found out today that they have filed an appeal against Priority's license to operate in this area in Superior Court, which is well within their right. It's within the statutes to do that. Interestingly, though, the state has been dragging their feet on giving priority their actual paper CON, which was approved in March. Typically, the paper CON follows pretty quickly behind. March, let's see, there's April, there's May. We're in June. They still don't have it.
That's 3 months, Chief.
Is that 3 months so far? 3 months. Jonas says 3 months, Ben.
I think he's a math guy.
And they're talking maybe not getting to it until end of July or August. And, they're busy, super busy down there. They just can't seem to get it done. Interestingly, typically when someone would file an appeal in Superior Court on an ambulance license issue, they would ask for a stay or an injunction so the other ambulance provider couldn't operate. And when they do that, they have to put up a bond, because if they lose, then they have to reimburse that ambulance provider for the potential lost revenue. In this case, fortunately for AMR, the Bureau has not issued the paper CON. Therefore, when they went into Superior Court, they didn't have to file an injunction, which means they didn't have to put up a bond for lost revenue. Personally, my personal opinion, I think the state should have to pay priority for lost revenue, because the delays are inexcusable and shouldn't be happening.
It's been an uphill battle from the start of trying to get better service in our area. It's just the efficiency of our government at work there.
Or inefficiency.
Yeah, I'm glad at our local level we can find abilities and overcome these obstacles that we have, and make sure that we are efficient as we can be as a CAFMA agency.
Right. Well, and we've said this before, and before we started, we talked about, hey, there's some things where we have limits we can't say on the podcast, and then there's some things that I can say. And so I'm not sure whether this is one of those I can or I can't, but I'm going to say it.
Jonah can bleep it out.
If necessary. I really believe that someone at the state level needs to take action and investigate the relationship between the Bureau of EMS, DHS, and AMR. There may be absolutely nothing there, but there are a lot of perceptions out there across the state about the close relationship that they have. And I'm not saying there's anything illegal going on. I don't know what the issue is. But there seems to be a lot of interesting dynamics between the two entities that you wouldn't normally see.
Yeah.
Just my opinion. I'm not going to ask you to respond to that, because if somebody gets sued, it's not going to be you. So let's move on to legislative issues. House Bill 2609, the ambulance licensing reform. That is really right now just waiting, because it is a financial bill right now, a money bill, and that can't move until the budget moves.
Yeah, the internal politics that are going on at the state, they're dynamic, very interesting. There's a lot of behind closed doors conversations that the lay people will never know that are happening out down there. And so that, with many other bills, they're being held up, part of the game that they're playing down there.
Right. So that one will move. We feel very strongly we're going to get that through. Now, that one still has a delayed date of effect, so to speak. So even when that one is signed, it won't actually be implemented until January 1, 2024. The Bureau of EMS was looking for some time to develop some additional documents that they would need, as well as they felt they needed some additional personnel, which I will agree. Today, as it stands today, the Bureau of EMS has fewer people than what they actually need. They are way understaffed. And so the money in this bill is an appropriations to hire 3 additional staff to help the Bureau move through things in their offices a little more quickly.
Maybe that'll provide the efficiency that they need down there to be able to operate more effectively.
Well, that would be nice. So the other one, we got some bad news yesterday. Senate 1234 is in the House, and Senate 1234 relates to marijuana.
Yes.
It does. And so when the recreational marijuana passed by a vote of the people on the ballot, there was language in there that directed some of the revenue to fire service, law enforcement agencies, PSPRS related, to help cover additional costs or expenses, because in other states where they've passed this, they've seen an increased demand for our services. Unfortunately, there's an attorney at the state level, not the attorney general, another attorney, who interpreted the current languages to not include fire authorities, even though we're actually made up of fire districts.
It was an oversight when it was drafted. It has been corrected. We did receive the money. The current interpretation by the Attorney General is that we should be included. This was just a cleanup language. It cost no money anywhere, didn't take money away from any other parties. It was just a simple cleaning of the original bill.
Right.
Should be a no-brainer. Really, probably just part of the games that are being played down there. Fortunately, we've got this address to be reheard. We're working through all of our avenues through the PFFA legislative team and trying to make sure we have the appropriate audience once it's reheard.
Well, and I think part of it is there's folks down there who at the legislature who still are not fond of the fact that the recreational marijuana passed. But the bottom line is it did pass. And so now we have to address these challenges. And when we look at just in simple terms, and I've reached out to Representative Burgess and sent her this information, let's say that marijuana tax would provide $300,000 for round numbers to CAFMA. It costs us for a new employee approximately $100,000 with employee-related expenses and gear.
Yeah.
So that would be 3 additional personnel, which is excellent. And that would come from marijuana tax. The people who buy marijuana fund those $300,000. Well, we need the 3 people. However, if we don't get the marijuana tax, then that has to go on the property tax. And if you just look at CYFD alone, the underlying taxing authorities for Central Arizona Fire and Medical, that would be a 3.52 cent increase to the property tax rate just to replace the monies that we would lose related to marijuana tax because of an interpretation. And the treasurer has said, no, I interpret it this way. But if that treasurer is not there, then we could lose the money. And if somebody else has a different interpretation, they could try to require us to give the money back. So we need the 3-word cleanup. It is a big deal because it relates to property tax rates.
Well, absolutely. It would be very unfortunate for Central Yavapai or Chino Valley have to raise their taxes because they're not receiving the funding that they deserve from the bill that was passed.
Right. So hopefully when that one's reheard, we'll have the right audience that'll pass. It does require a supermajority, so it passed yesterday with a simple majority, but not the supermajority.
Yeah.
We're just short of that. So now you and I we're recording on Tuesday for a podcast on Friday, but the reason we're recording Tuesday is because you and I are going to be at the Senate on Wednesday, June 8th this week to visit on another bill.
Absolutely. We have a very important piece of legislation trying to get through, and that's to provide an alternate funding source for fire districts throughout the state. And this is going to be a 1/10 of a penny temporary sales tax. And, that burden of providing that essential service will be spread throughout the state, including tourism.
Right. So what's the bill number on this one again? So folks listening know.
Stryker 1049.
Stryker 1049. So basically it's a ballot initiative. It's the legislators referring to the ballot, a question for the voters to decide, are you willing to pay a 1/10 of a cent sales tax to help support fire districts across the state? There is a 20-year sunset. Our hope would be that it doesn't sunset because, one, it would diversify the revenue resources for a fire district because what a lot of people don't realize is cities, towns, county governments, schools have multiple different funding sources. We basically have one. 98% of our revenue comes from property tax.
Yeah, all our eggs are in one basket. And I think any simple financial plan calls for diversification. Nobody wants their investments to be solely with one fund or one avenue.
Right. Well, and the other thing with this is when we look at, I was talking to my physical therapist yesterday. Shout out to Laura Markey at Center for Physical Excellence. And she was in Fire Ops 101, and I was talking to her yesterday about funding, and she said, I never realized how a municipal department is funded differently than a fire district. She said, I didn't get that until there.
For the common person, as long as a red truck shows up when they call 911, they don't know where it comes from or who pays for it as long as it's there.
Right.
And that, we've made a really good case of that, not making that a public problem. We come every time.
So one of the things that this would do, because a municipal department, let's just cover that real quick for folks. Municipal fire departments receive their general fund from sales tax revenue generated within their area. So anyone that visits, shops, dines, stays in a municipality with a municipal fire department, some of the tax revenue that they're paying, some of the sales taxes that they're paying, actually help pay for those services. So if they call 911, they're helping fund the system.
Absolutely.
In a fire district, we're solely property tax based. So let's take that same person that came up from Phoenix, shopped, stayed and ate in Prescott, called 911. Well, they've paid towards that system. Now, let's say the next night that person is shopping, dining, and visiting in Prescott Valley, and they call 911 for fire services. Well, those sales taxes don't go to us. So it's solely the people that live here or own properties here, business owners, so forth and so on, who fund our services. So people from outside the area who utilize the services aren't paying for the services.
Yeah, and that that's putting a burden on our residents that own property here instead of being able to diversify this throughout the entire state.
Right, and the 0.1% sales tax would generate some significant revenue for our organization. That would be helpful for us in hiring new people. As we've talked about, we've already identified that we are down a 24-hour engine.
Yeah, we are strapped and have trimmed all the fat out of our budgets to operate. So, we need all of the revenue source we can get. And this is going to provide that. It's going to let us catch up to the levels that we need to provide services to our community.
Right. And when we look at hiring, so as we've talked about on here before, not this next fiscal year because we have a safer grant in, but the following 3 fiscal years, we want to hire at least 4, maybe 6 people a year to put another 24-hour engine in place. So we have 10 full-time 24-hour engines today. Mm-hmm. We have 1 40-hour engine, and we want to put up an 11th full-time engine because call volume.
Yeah, it's dramatically increased. Our population's increased, the tourism's increased, and we have stayed fairly flat as far as our growth.
Right. So when we look at the data that shows that we're already behind today in what we need, but we can't fund that for another 4 years, how much further behind are we? At that point, we're probably 2 24-hour engines down.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to continually be playing catch up forever as a fire district unless something changes. And most of the fire districts in the state, they're on a dead end path right now.
Right.
We have some opportunity for increasing our tax levy to make up for that income that we need. Many of the fire districts throughout the state don't have that opportunity.
Right. And we talked about earlier, just the $300,000 would require a 3.5 cent tax increase for CYFD. And if you were just trying to raise $100,000 on the Chino side, it'd be a 6.67 cent tax increase. So when we look at those numbers and we say, well, we need to hire 4 people per year minimum at $100,000 a piece for round numbers. Again, that's employee-related expenses and gear. You're talking about a 4.5 cent increase to the tax rate just to start hiring people to meet demand because we're currently under a regressive tax structure.
Yeah, I mean we're behind. We've never rebound from the Great Recession. And, as we're talking, we probably never will unless things change. No. And so if this is referred to the ballot and the voters have the chance to vote on it, we can defer some of those property tax increases by utilizing another revenue stream, which would be from a 1/10 of a cent sales tax. That's what we could do with it. Here's what it looks like without it. But to even get to that point, the legislators have to vote to refer the initiative to the ballot. Yeah, and that goes back to some of the antics that are going on at the Capitol. They're trying to tie this to a money issue with the budget, and it's really not a money issue because this is a referral for the voters to decide.
Right. Yeah, it's giving the the voice to the voters in the state of Arizona to say, how do you want to fund fire districts? And then if it goes out to the voters, then there's a lot of information that needs to be provided so people understand why, just like we talked about.
Yeah.
Because municipal governments are funded this way, fire districts are funded this way. Under municipality, your sales tax that everybody pays to support the system. Under the fire district, only those people who own properties pay.
Yeah, and I think we're in a good time right now with the governor's office. He's made public comment saying we need more firefighters in the state of Arizona.
We do,
and there's no greater truth in our profession. So with him coming out publicly to say that, it really opens the opportunity for us politically to use that.
Sure.
And I think he believes that. He sees it in the state.
Mm-hmm.
So anything that we can get to the governor's office for his signature, he's already said that he's going to sign.
Well, and think about it. The feds and the state are having difficulty hiring their seasonal wildland firefighters, which means they're actually depending on us more, the local entities. And we do serve as the fire service for the state of Arizona because there's only so many resources the state will put up. So they call for us. Well, we're running into situations because of our increased call volume. Our folks are just exhausted. So we're having trouble backfilling positions, which means mandatory overtime, which means we're not sending engines out on wildland because we need the big trucks to roll out of the stations here to protect our local community. But missing out on those wildland assignments is a detriment to our community. As Chief Durr and I talked about last week, the knowledge and expertise that our folks bring back from those to our community allows us to get ahead of a wildland incident in our area much faster than most.
Yeah, in the way the state forestry is set up, fire districts and some of the municipal fire departments, they're the first line defense.
Yes.
They don't have a fleet of firefighters. So they rely on us, and when we don't have the manpower to respond to the incidents that they're calling for, that harms the entire state.
Yes.
That harms just multiple levels that you don't think about from a wildland fire,
right.
From watershed issues to agricultural issues to human issues of infrastructure.
And staffing is a challenge. We did our first ever joint recruiting day this past Saturday. We had law enforcement, we had emergency communications, we had Yavapai College with their EMT and paramedic programs, as well as their firefighter 1 and 2. Priority ambulance was there. Yes, AMR was there. Of course, Prescott Fire, us, we were there because it was hosted at our facility. And for a week and a half's notice, there was a lot of good turnout. But we're trying to get out and build that next generation of people to work for this agency. And if we can hire the number of people we need, and if we can develop most of them in this area, it's better for our community. It's better for our agency and agency culture. And with that, I have a question for Taylor. So, because your daughter Taylor's here with us, and so we might as well ask her. So what are you doing? Are you in college right now?
No, I just finished.
Just finished college? Graduated?
Yes.
And what are you going to do?
I'm going to go work as a lab tech.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you realize there's an accelerated EMT program that just opened up at Yavapai College? And that we will hire you with just an EMT license and put you through the fire academy?
Well, if you can talk me into it.
There's potential here, Ben. We have more conversations we need to have with Taylor about her potentially being a firefighter.
Well, we'll have to have some conversation. I don't know if her degree is in the field of fire science. In fact, I know it's not.
Whatever.
So
we don't care.
Yeah.
Desperate.
She does have a minor in psychology, so she could be useful here, analyzing some of our men and women.
And what better place to do that than from the engine itself?
That's true.
Being on the engine, I think there's opportunity. It's not desperation. It's what we want to do is let people know that, hey, this might be a career for you, and it's something you should think about. And just give it some consideration. And those with psychology degrees, we can use you.
We just are facing a double-edged sword of, the environment we are socially, every workforce is facing this
Yes.
problem of getting employees and retaining employees. And then we, on the other front, have a funding issue to be able to pay these employees.
Right.
So it's a problem we have, and it's not going to go away.
Especially to pay a living wage for the area that we live in.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any way for us, based on housing costs up here, to pay an entry-level position enough to actually be able to afford a first-time home, because the costs have just skyrocketed, and it's beyond reach, and it's unfortunate.
Definitely a problem.
And so these other avenues for revenue will help us diversify our portfolio, help us control some of that property tax rate so it's not going up the way that it is right now, will allow us to staff for firefighter safety, to staff to address call volume issues, to avoid some of the mandatory overtime we're seeing today, and pay a wage that will attract people to here, because we are absolutely competing with the fire service throughout the state of Arizona for people.
Yeah, and financing is going to answer a lot of those problems.
Right.
When we can offer a decent wage to our applicants,
right,
we're going to get more applicants. And I go back to the governor's office with the statements of needing more firefighters. I think he recognizes that, and that's part of opening up some of that ARPA funds.
Right.
Trying to reimburse the fire districts. I know that got distributed out to our brothers and sisters throughout the municipalities. But he has guaranteed that he is going to fund firefighters. By his statements. And so, we're looking to get a little bit of money reimbursed for our workman's comp pool once that comes through with the budget. And that's another thing that, we can help hold pressure on the governor of, we need that money, or else it's going to prevent, or with that money, we're going to prevent layoffs and cuts in services.
Well, and if you think about it, I mean, if you look at how much money the municipalities and the counties and the state received, millions, billions of dollars in the state's case, for COVID relief funds, and our grand total is, I'm not good with math. Jonah, what was the grand total? Zero.
Yeah. It took me a while to find that number. But
yeah, it was hard to add all that up and come up with, we didn't get anything.
No, and that's a problem for fire districts throughout the state. We're faced with some significant increased costs in our workman's comp pool that some of that's even COVID directly related.
Oh, absolutely, 35% of it.
Yes, so, we need to do something about that as a state.
Yeah.
And hopefully we can get that work done at the Capitol by the end of the session.
Well, like we said, we provided services throughout COVID. That's our job. That's what we do. Our municipal partners who provided those same services, their cities did receive them. Now, whether they received the money directly from the city or not, I can't tell you, because I know there's some new programs going up in some communities that are funded through COVID. But for the areas that we protect, we didn't receive anything. They received the dollars. And so far, the state has not seen clear to provide us any reimbursement. And we're not looking for millions of dollars so that we can build a statue or beautify buildings. Here's what we spent.
Yeah, I mean,
that's it.
We want the money to provide an essential service.
Yeah, that's it. Here's our receipts.
Yeah.
So if we can get some of those monies from ARPA and maybe some additional monies towards workers' comp, that would go a long way to offsetting the 105% increase we saw in workers' comp this next year, and the $375,730 approximately check that we have to write June 30th for an assessment. And a large part of that assessment is related to the COVID deaths that the fire district saw. Not us directly, but it impacts us because we're in the same pool.
Yeah, and on the firefighter level, our legislative team at the Capitol is educating every elected down there on the decision making that needs to happen to be able to fund that. And with the commitment from the governor, he is moving on in his career, and this is his legacy. And so that's what we're trying to remind him, is he wants to leave a good legacy of the fire service and not leave this up in flames as the fire season goes on.
Right.
Here, and we can't fund firefighters.
Yeah, that's not helpful. So a couple other bills real quick. One of them was when it relates to consolidation. So somebody went to the archives down in the basement and pulled out something and dusted the cover off and said, hey, there was this legal challenge in the early 1900s related to railroads. And so basically what it did was when two entities consolidated and each entity had a bond, well, then the bond would get spread among everybody that was inside the new agency. That was frustrating people who said, I didn't approve those bonds. That wasn't what I did. And it was for infrastructure that was built prior to us engaging, and it was over here. So what this bill does is says, no, when you consolidate, the bonds can stay separate and stay with the voters who approve the bonds, which once folks found out that, no, they have to be those debts, that debt service needs to be blended together, they were a little frustrated.
Well, we're finding efficiencies in the fire service. We've been doing this for a decade plus since the recession. One of those efficiencies was consolidations. We found a lot of efficiencies in combining positions, combining staffs. And one of the obstacles was, when we merged, we lost income or we lost the ability to tax for that income appropriately.
Right.
This was just another language cleanup bill.
Yeah.
It really didn't cost anybody money, fix the system, and it's just an example of smart government.
Well, and we've seen a lot of efficiencies through fire district mergers, consolidations, and fire authorities in those areas where a merger or consolidation wasn't possible. It's a slow process to start removing some of the barriers that people didn't realize existed. When you have to go down to the archives, and I'm not talking microfiche, which nobody knows what that is anymore.
I love microfiche.
I remember going to the library with those stupid things. I like Google. Google's awesome. But you had to go further back. It was almost like it was in stone. It was carved in, so only with or cave dwellings. So, we're finding those little things. We're trying to fix them. But one of those things is that weed money as well that we're trying to get. There was one other one you mentioned earlier.
I think we've covered. The House Bill 2336, the licensed mental health professionals, more of a definition for what a licensed health professional is. We had our mental health bill last year, providing some presumptive coverage, and this just was more language cleanup to help that system.
Well, we're having a lot of conversations within our agency about behavioral health. We've signed a retainer agreement with Start Moving On Counseling Service, who specializes in trauma counseling for military, first responders, law enforcement. Just fantastic group of people. We're so happy to be working with them, as well as the Mighty Oaks Foundation, the Center for Excellence. We're finding resources, but the key component of that is having a culture where people say or feel comfortable saying, I'm not okay. And I think based on some of the conversations I had at the conference and just around here, we're seeing some improvement with that. And hopefully that will continue, because a vital part of what we do is keeping our folks not just physically healthy, but mentally healthy as well.
Absolutely. This has been a great topic, not just in our organization, but nationwide with the International Association of Firefighters and then as well as with the Professional Firefighters of Arizona.
Right.
We dedicated a portion of our convention last week to this subject, and had some health professionals come in and talk about even newer services that are coming out that we should be exploring. Well,
it's good to see this as a topic of conversation for the union, for the fire chiefs, for the fire districts. Now we have to remove those roadblocks within organizations so that people feel comfortable coming out. Now, Jen did ask, and I don't blame her for asking, because she is married to me, she feels like some counseling services would be good for her. Something about tolerating, I don't know. I don't understand it, but I'm not sure she's covered just because she's married to me and she believes that I am the cause.
Well, I think we've been talking about a wives' brigade.
We have.
And that might be a common theme of, putting up with their spouses that are first responders.
Yes, that's correct. And the Wives Union, I am the president of that.
I've heard that.
So that's good because they can bring their grievances to me related to you. Yeah. Jen feels left out because she has nowhere to go with her grievances.
Have her talk to Heather.
Yeah. I'm concerned, though, because she takes martial arts twice on Thursdays. So she makes me nervous. But Ben, thank you so much for coming on. I think we covered some good ground today, some information people needed. I'm looking forward to seeing firefighter paramedic Taylor in the future, because I think this is a good opportunity here for her to do some great things. And I will say this: when we had the recruiting event, a young man and his girlfriend walked up, and he's telling us about finishing up EMT and going through firefighter 1 and 2. And she's kind of standing off to the side. And I said, well, that's great. And then I looked at her and I said, well, what are you doing? And she said, I work for a dental clinic. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, what do you want to do? She's like, I'm not real sure. I said, well, maybe the right place for you is on an engine. Have you ever thought about that? And she's like, I don't know. Maybe.
You're a great recruiting officer,
so we're out there trying to actively recruit and let people know this profession may be for you. You should consider it. Just take a look.
I mean, here's Taylor thinking she just came out for lunch today, and now she's being recruited.
Exactly. She's like, I have to tolerate this guy now? No way. I am never coming here again. But Ben, thank you for coming in. Taylor, thanks for coming out with him. As always, Jonah, thank you for the excellent work. I think we're going to try to have some fun next week on the podcast. Brad Davis, I'm coming for you. I think it's going to be enjoyable. You're going to want to watch that one on YouTube. So with that, don't forget to like and subscribe. Tune in on your favorite podcast platform. And until next week, just enjoy the weather.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Ben.